Hi guys, I'm back again today. Why we won't raise our kids in suburbia? Well, before we start, don't forget to subscribe, click the bell button, and this is another Buy Me a Coffee, so let's get it. Why?
I grew up in a car-infested city called London,
Oh,
Ontario, Canada.
oh,
But we
okay.
don't want to raise our kids in an environment like this, and we moved to Amsterdam instead. So why is that?
You tell me, mister.
One thing you immediately notice when coming to the Netherlands is that there are a lot of children around. You'll routinely see even
Yeah,
young children cycling to school, playing with their
it
friends, and
feels so
just
safe.
hanging out in the city. The Dutch are famous for having the happiest kids in the world, and a big part of that is the fact that they can literally have chocolate sprinkles for breakfast. But
Why was I not born there? Like, somebody question, right? Like, we have to question everyone. Like, why not giving birth in Netherlands? Like,
the
what are
other
we
big
doing?
factor is the level of independence that children have here. I got used to seeing children everywhere, so it was amazing to see the difference the first time I returned to my hometown in Canada. I drove around several residential
Oh, but
neighborhoods,
there's
and
no
while I
kids.
occasionally saw
Yeah.
some kids in the park with their parents, I never saw any children out on their own, and that's really sad. I've talked to some parents from suburban Canada about why they don't let their children out on their own, and they usually say it's because it's too dangerous.
Yeah.
One person even said somebody could come along with a white van, scoop them up, and nobody would even notice.
Truth.
Now, that's insane because Canada is one of the safest countries in the world and abductions by strangers are exceedingly unlikely. So, why do people think this? Well,
I
there are
don't know.
various reasons for this cultural change, including an increase in fear mongering media, but this is an urban planning channel, so we're going to talk about the reasons linked to city design because there are a lot of them. In her famous book, The Death and Life of Great American Cities, Jane Jacobs refers to an effect she calls eyes on the street. Essentially, it means that people feel safer to be in places with many other people, like here, in this
Yeah.
suburb of Amsterdam.
Oh, because the other suburbia, it was very like secluded, right? And it looks really like empty. It's not like in the city center, so it's hard to trust your child.
By comparison, North American style car dependent suburbia is desolate for people outside of a car.
Desolate, yeah.
It's depressing to walk there, and I know because I've done it a lot in the process of filming these videos.
Oh,
I'm almost always the only one out walking, and I definitely get the feeling that if something happened to me, hundreds of people would drive by without even noticing.
exactly.
So it shouldn't be too surprising that some parents are uncomfortable having their children walk in an environment like this.
Yeah, and
Now,
somebody can
there's
just pull
another
up and
safety
take your
reason that's a
child
bit more
there.
rational. Canadian and American cities are really dangerous for pedestrians. While overall traffic fatalities in developed nations have generally fallen steadily since the 1970s, in the US and Canada, a big part of this was achieved by putting almost everyone inside of a car. But while people inside of cars may be safer, pedestrian deaths have increased significantly in the past few decades due to an increase in car traffic, larger trucks and SUVs, distracted driving, and higher vehicle speeds.
Every time I get into a cab and the
Ultimately,
driver
these
is texting,
unsafe
I'm like,
roads lead to a vicious.
can you, like in my head, because I'm so, like, I can't say it, because I feel like he might, like, kill me or something. So, anyways, in my head, I'm like, you know what? You can drive and text when you're alone. You can kill your life. Like, you can take your own life, but don't do it when there's a passenger, right? Like, do that when you're alone. Text and drive, but not when there's someone. Like, excuse you.
Parents are more likely to drive their children everywhere because it's not safe due to all the cars. But in doing so, they're adding one more car to the problem and making it even less safe. I'd like to point out that this is a unique problem caused only by cars. I mean, nobody ever kept their kids from walking to school just because too many people took the tram. But also, it's impractical for children to go anywhere on their own in a place like this.
Yeah.
Suburbia is car dependent, that means it's almost impossible to get anywhere without a car.
Because it's so huge.
So even if you wanted your child to walk somewhere, they simply can't. It's either too far or it's not feasible because of a lack of sidewalks. When I have discussions with people from my suburban hellscape of a hometown, they usually agree that the city is quiet and soul-crushingly boring, but they will inevitably say, "But it's a good place to raise children." I
No.
completely disagree.
Yeah.
Suburbia may be a good
Why
place
do you
to
wanna-
shelter toddlers, but as
Yeah.
soon as a child is more than about 6 years old, being trapped in a McMansion on the edge of town seriously inhibits their
So
growth and
boring.
independence. They might be able to walk to a friend's house if they're lucky enough to live
Maybe
somewhere
that's
with a
why,
sidewalk.
like in the movies, the kids are always like sneaking out and going to parties and doing all these things that they shouldn't be doing because there's nothing to do, right? Like, okay, unless you live like across the streets from your friend, then probably there's something, or maybe your friends all live there, so it's fun. But apart from that, whoa.
But they're unlikely to be able to walk to school or anywhere else for that matter. In the Netherlands, 60% of children walk or cycle to school compared to 28% in Canada.
What?
Mostly those kids who live in the few remaining walkable pre-war neighborhoods that would be illegal to build today due to modern zoning.
Oh.
But when I was a kid, that number was 58% in Canada, almost identical to the Netherlands today.
Yeah.
Look at these Canadian kids walking through their rural school in the 1920s, through the
Wow.
snow, uphill both ways. Yeah, that never happens anymore. This is the bicycle
That's why
parking
kids
lot of a
nowadays are
typical
like
middle school in Amsterdam.
so lazy, and some of them are like already obese at a very very young age, which is really sad. And they're, because when you walk right in the morning to school, you will be like awoke when you will be awake when you get into class, right? Because you're like your heart is beating, and you just woke up, right? So that's good, since kids don't drink coffee anyway. So when you get to class, that is kind of like your adrenaline, that's your coffee. So you'll be up, and also you get your workout in, right? And it's good for everyone. And I, as a parent, I don't have to like freaking take you to school. I don't have to miss work for that. I don't have to spend for gas to, like, who is happy? Everyone. So why don't we have this everywhere? I mean, it's impossible to kind of like get rid of a lot of infrastructure just for like, anyways.
And this is the bicycle parking lot of an elementary school.
Wow.
It is obvious here that the majority of children arrive on their own bicycles. I'm constantly
to be
hearing
reborn
excuses from North Americans as
again.
to why kids can walk
wanna
or
live
cycle
my
to
life
school in the Netherlands, but
as a child
not in
there.
Canada. And it's usually some nonsense about the weather or the hills. Do either of these things explain the massive drop in the number of kids walking to school in Canada? Did Canada's weather get worse in the past 40 years? Did the hills get higher? No, of course not. But we did stop building family-friendly housing anywhere that wasn't car-dependent. Meanwhile, here in the Netherlands, it's not just kids in cities who cycle to school, it's everywhere. Bicycle Dutch has several videos showing dozens of children cycling long distances to school in suburbs, towns, and villages. And it's more than just school, too. Kids have lots of sports and other activities, so in the Netherlands, it's very common to see children walking or cycling while dressed in football gear, not that kind of football, or hockey gear, not that kind of hockey, because they travel to all these activities by themselves.
Oh wow, so cool. They're so
In
independent.
the US and
I don't know,
Canada,
I'm
you have the
emotional.
stereotype of the suburban soccer mom, the mother who spends all of her time shuttling her kids around from school
No,
to
thank you. Yeah,
activities to
I'm
play
busy.
dates and back.
Unless I have no job,
Because
then think I
until a
will.
kid is about 16 years old and has their own driver's license, they need to be driven around everywhere by their parents, and this is considered normal. Is it any surprise that kids in the US and Canada don't get enough exercise?
Exactly
I can't
what I'm
blame
saying.
them for wanting to stay inside playing video games all day when outside looks like this. These
But the
problems
thing is,
originate in
We have an outside that looks even worse than that, but kids still go out to play. At least in the provincial small cities, right? Even if it is like big cities, you still find kids like playing outside. Um, Maybe not as much as, of course, in the smaller cities or the provincial parts of the Philippines. That is part of, I think, culture already, to kind of like always be with your friends, hanging out outside. Even adults will go outside, hang out with their friends as well. Mostly drinking, just on the streets. Yeah. So if you come to the Philippines, there'll be like houses, right? And in the middle, where supposedly be like a car park, or a car, like a car going into like the houses deep inside. You just see like random strangers or group of people just drinking there on the side, karaoke on the side as well, and then maybe a basketball happening behind them. Yeah, that's how it looks like here. So people still hang out outside a lot.
Dependent suburbs, but unfortunately, decades of suburbanization have changed the overall culture where now many Canadians don't believe it's safe for any children to be out on their own. So, even if you could afford to live in one of the very few remaining walkable neighborhoods, you still can't give your children the independence they deserve.
Okay, no thank you then.
For example, here in Amsterdam, we started allowing our children to go to the park without us when they were 9 and 6 years old. This is
Whoa.
totally normal and accepted in the Netherlands.
There is a
If
place,
we
I'm
let
not sure if it is the Netherlands, but my friend was telling me this. Like, she saw a video of like people leaving their kids in the strollers. And I was like, is that okay? Because obviously here, it's not okay, because firstly, it's hot. Secondly, um, if you come back, there's no baby to come back to. Or maybe not even the baby, even the stroller is gone, right? Maybe they will chuck the baby somewhere and then they will sell the stroller. Maybe they even stole the baby because of the stroller to begin with. But yeah, I was surprised. But then now that I watch this type of videos, I'm like, I get it now.
children do this in Canada, we would literally have someone call the police, or
Yeah.
worse. Now, you might think I'm exaggerating, but there are stories about this happening all over the US and Canada. And the one that angered me the most was the story of Adrian Crook.
Oh, what happened?
Adrian is a father of 5 children and lives in downtown Vancouver, Canada. He has always been a vocal advocate of allowing kids to have their independence and has written about how walkable urban city design makes this easier and more practical. As part of this effort, Adrian and his kids would ride the bus to school every day. He did this with them for 2 years, but in 2017, he started letting them do it on their own.
Oh my god.
A
don't
short
tell
time
me.
later, he was anonymously reported to the Ministry of Children and Family Development. The whole story is available on
Oh
his
my
blog that I'll link to below, but in the end, the ministry decided
Okay,
that
thank
children
God that
under
the
the
kids
age
are
of 10
okay.
could not be unsupervised in or outside of the home for any amount of time.
It's like we're
And
not
if Adrian
giving
let any
parents
of his
life.
children out unsupervised again, even to go to the store across the street, his
Oh
children would be taken away from him. Adrian literally had to spend
Here in the
3
Philippines,
years of his life
even like a 3-year-old, you can tell them to go buy cigarettes, which is not the best. Okay, like don't do that because it's crazy. But the things that children do at like a young age, meaning like the fact that they can go out at a very very young age to just hang out by themselves, is crazy. And the thing is, Philippines is not necessarily like into kidnapping. The crime that will the I know that it happens. Yes, it does happen. But the crime that happens the most here is more like stealing things, right? Like some people need money. It's a country that is like poor, so they need money. They don't care about your freaking child, because that is one more human being for them to feed. Um, what they care more about is to have money. So yes, they will steal your phone, they will steal like gadgets, uh, jewelries, but human beings very rare.
the Ministry of Children and Family Development
But that's
just to allow his children
Still,
to
be
have some
careful.
independence. And if you think that's insane, in Ontario, the province where I'm from, children legally cannot be on their own until they're 16 unless, quote,
Oh.
adequate supervision is provided. When I was a kid, adequate
That
supervision
phone
was,
needs
say,
help, though.
having the phone number of a
30.
neighbor. But the problem is, what constitutes adequate supervision is becoming increasingly strict, and arbitrarily applied. This article has examples from all over Canada where child welfare investigations were started because, for example, a 9-year-old walked to school on her own, or because a mother allowed her children to play in the fenced backyard of their own house while she was watching them from
Even that
inside.
you can't do?
Now, you
What?
might say that these visits from police or social workers are just overreactions
It's
and it's
my
better to be
house.
safe than sorry.
Well, true,
But
but
these social workers have the
it's
power to
sad.
literally take your children away from you. You're crazy if you don't think this has a chilling effect that ultimately limits the independence of children
I'm
in North
moving to
America.
Amsterdam if I have
Personally,
kids.
I have absolutely no interest in finding out the hard way what the currently accepted definition of adequate supervision may be when it comes to keeping custody of my children. Unfortunately, the solutions to these problems are not easy because they involve changing not just cultural issues, but also the fundamental design of North American cities and suburbs. Traditional mixed-use walkable neighborhoods have a multitude of benefits, but walkability is nearly impossible to retrofit on top of car-dependent suburbia. And the
Can
last
you
few
hire like a
remaining walkable
bodyguard for
places
your
in the US
kids?
and Canada are in such high demand that they're
Or that's called
completely
nanny,
unaffordable
right?
to most
Okay.
people. Of
Babysitting.
course, we're also not building any more walkable places like this in Canada because they're illegal to build due to zoning and car-centric regulations like minimum parking requirements. So, what was built 100 years ago is it. We're not getting any more. And if you
That's
can't
it.
afford it, too bad.
Damn. They don't
There's
even
this
give you an
insane
option.
myth in North America that when you have kids, you need a car and you need to live in suburbia, when the exact opposite is true. What children really need is fewer cars because cars are dangerous, especially for children. Plus, newsflash, kids can't drive. But they can walk or cycle, though only if it's safe. Here in the Netherlands, almost all new neighborhoods are walkable, and some of them are even car-free. Unsurprisingly, you see kids traveling on their own and playing together in the streets. So a few years ago, my wife and I had to make a decision. What kind of life did we want for us and, more importantly, for our children? And the solution seemed pretty clear.
I wonder how they moved
We
there.
moved to
Like,
the country with the happiest kids in the world.
I'm gonna move there too.
I'd
I
like to
hope
take this opportunity to
still
thank my
will
supporters
be.
on Patreon who pay me to remake the classics. If you'd like to join them in supporting this channel, visit Patreon.
That is so cool. Like I definitely want, even like I said, I wanna like relive my childhood just in Amsterdam because it feels like that's the life that kids deserve, right? It's so beautiful. Every time I react to this beautiful, you see, I can't even speak anymore. Every time I react to these videos, I just get jealous. I'm happy for people who live there, but then I'm jealous for myself because I just watch it on videos and I don't get to be there by myself. I mean, on my own. I don't get to live that. What am I even trying to say? But anyways, thank you guys for joining, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.